witches, welcome back. Apologies if the lighting is a little off, but we are doing this early in the morning because they're going to start more road construction outside, so let's get this in before that happens. Also, if you hear some tapping and sniffling around, that is my brother-in-law's dog, Levi, who is hanging out up here. Today I have another monthly recap video for you. So we are going over my goals. Mainly, I am just going to be talking about my no-spend year and reviewing the books that I read in August. One of my main goals for 2024 was to just basically not spend money. I've got bills, I've got groceries, of course, but on witch supplies and books, really trying not to spend anything. I have not been totally successful, but I have been a little bit better lately. So let's go over what happened in August. Besides the normal bills, I also spent $290.93 on my dog. That was food, medication, all kinds of things. On groceries, I spent $367.45, and I think that's going to take us well into September as well. I spent $50 on gifts, and I spent $101.82 on household supplies, which included getting chips and gum for the little cart that I stack outside for our mailman and delivery people, as well as toilet paper, paper towels, vinegar, and started stocking up on Halloween candy. So that's where that money went. I also spent $7.58 on postage to the giveaway winner over on Patreon to ship their package out, and $47.23 on gas. Overall, I think that's not bad. As you can see, no books, no witchcraft supplies. So doing good on that front. And the only thing that came in, which was a gift from my husband, and also I had like a gift card to pay for partial of it, was they re-released the Naked palette, and I picked that up at Ulta, and it makes my basic white girl millennial heart so happy. But mostly for August, I want to talk about books, because I had a lot of thoughts and opinions on the ones that I really did not like this month. Overall, I read 24 books in August, 10,881 pages. Now, I did not give any 5 stars this month, but I did give 15 4 stars. So you would think that that would skew it in favor of it being a good reading month, but I think the ones that I gave 3 1-stars and 1 2-star, I felt very strongly about how much I did not like those, and I'm mad about it. So let's get into it. We are not going to talk about all 24 books because I can take 10 off the list quickly, because I talked about it last month that I have been reading through Rick Riordan's backlog. That is the author of the Percy Jackson series. And I read the Percy Jackson series when I was younger, and I loved it. And there's a whole world of other books, and I have been reading through all of those. So I read the 5 books in the Heroes of Olympus series and the 5 books in the Trials of Apollo series. So that's 10 books right off the bat. And all the same things that I said last month regarding his backlog still apply. I love reading middle grade. They're so nice to, when they're written well, so nice to get through between some of the darker themes that I read in adult books. It's so nice to go back to middle grade and read some sweet stories that have, great lessons, but also happy endings. And Rick Riordan delivers on that. He knows what his audience likes. They are very formulaic. So if you've read Percy Jackson, you are gonna know exactly what's gonna happen. In these other ones, it's all the main characters read exactly like Percy, and all the side characters read exactly like Annabeth and Grover. So he's got a formula, but it totally works. And I had a good time with them, and I think I rated all of them between 3.5 and 4 stars. So let's take those 10 off the list right away. How about the other 14 books that I read in the month? First up, not witchcraft, but not the fiction books either. So we are going to go with Food to Die For by Amy Bruni. And this book is perfect for spooky history fans. It is part cookbook, part spooky history, and it's all throughout the United States, just going through the history of different haunted places. And then there is a recipe with each place that's a recipe from the restaurant or the people who were there. So I wouldn't say any of the recipes are groundbreaking. They're not spooky themed, that they would look outwardly Halloween-y, but the history behind them and the history behind the place is spooky. So if you are a spooky paranormal history fan, then you are going to like this. It's not something that you would get for the recipes, because a lot of them are just, standard fare that you would find at any like diner or restaurant. But the story behind them is what makes it fun. And I love all the pictures, and I love all the spooky paranormal history. So this was right up my alley. So I gave this one 4 stars. As far as witchcraft books, let's start there and then we'll dive into fiction. And I have 3 to talk about this month. So I think we'll go in the order in which I enjoyed them. So 4 stars to Magic at the Crossroads by Kate Fowler. If you read her last book, which was Of Blood and Bones, you will absolutely know that this is from the same author as you are reading it. It's set up very similarly, where it is a lot of information and history and how to, and less in terms of spell work, but there is really great history and learning in here, all about the archetype of the devil, horned god within pagan practices. So this is really well researched, and I like Kate's approach because it is very similar to mine, which I think I'll talk about in an upcoming video, so I won't touch on it too much here. But just the idea that you might not believe in the devil in the same way that comes across in like the Christian Bible, but more so that the devil and demons are seen as archetypes that can be worked with within your witchcraft practice. And I think this is like perfect in time with the season, heading into spooky season. There's a lot more devil imagery that comes up, and I think you can get a lot of great historical, well-researched information in here, huge bibliography and stuff. And then there are some actual actionable steps in here, a few of them, of rituals and spells to try. So if you like her original book of Blood and Bones, I think that you are going to like this one as well. And like I said, I had a good time with it, even if it's not something that I am necessarily going to practice or put into any of the rituals in here into actual practice, but I found the information really, really useful nonetheless. I gave 3 stars to Slow Seasons by Rosie Steer, which I thought was a really nice book. It's a creative guide to reconnecting with nature the Celtic way. So it is set up in the Sabbath format. That's how it goes through all of the holidays and goes through the year. It has recipes, it has crafts, and I really do love that in a book. I thought the way it was printed was interesting. It's got really wide margins on a lot of the pages, and then the print is kind of small. You can see sort of on these pages what I'm talking about. It's not like illegibly small, but it just frustrated me reading it. I was like, why don't we just make it bigger? And that would be a little bit easier to read and understand. So I gave it a 3 stars. I thought there was nothing particularly new in here. Because of the way it was printed, once you're reading the information, it actually felt pretty short. So I thought that it could be longer, and some of the recipes and projects that were in here I thought were a little bit complicated or required quite a few ingredients, and I'm not necessarily the type of person who is going to go through all of that effort. So I think if you enjoy slow living, the Sabbath holidays, Wheel of the Year, and you like books that are set up like that, this might be the one for you. But if you have already gone through a lot of different Sabbath books and have that information, you might find this a little repetitive. And also 3 stars to The Practical Witches Spellbook by Caradwyn Greenleaf. And I feel like I've looked through this before, read it before. This is not a new release. This came out in 2018, but I didn't really remember it. So I fully went through and read this. And I think that it's beautifully set up on the inside, but it's not my favorite in terms of a spell book to be particularly useful in my type of practice. I do think some of them are Wiccan leaning. It's not like a Wiccan book, but just some of the wording and the, so mote it be, harm none. It's kind of sounds Wiccan. But there just weren't too many spells and things that I thought would be useful. I do think that there's a lot of simple ones. There's a lot that's just energy work, so you don't actually need to buy anything. And then there's a few that do require some ingredients, crystals, herbs, but not so many or weird ones that you would feel like you can't substitute or find them easily. So it's very simple. If you do not have a beginner simple spell book and are looking for a place to start, I think this could be a good starter option. But if you are a little more advanced, you probably won't find anything that's that new or useful in this one. So again, middle of the road, a 3. Into my fiction reads. So I'm going to go through some of the ones that I don't have a lot to say about, and then I will get into favorites and least favorites, because I have a lot to say about my least favorites. So ones that I enjoyed and don't have a ton to say about, the Sword of Kaiden by M.L. Wong. I gave 3.5 stars, and I feel like that one was hard to rate. That is a high fantasy, and I wanted to read it because M.L. Wong has another book coming out in October called Blood Over Brighthaven, and I want to read that one, and I wanted to see if I liked the writing style, and I do. It was just very hard to rate this book because it read very much like it's supposed to be part of a series, but the author has decided not to continue that series. So the book itself I thought was very good and like very interesting, and I really liked the characters and the story, but the peak of the story is at like the 60% mark, which makes sense if, you know, it's like the later half of the book is going over like all of the characters and setting up for what's going to happen in the future, so that makes sense, except there is no continuation of the series. So if it was, I probably would have rated it higher because I was enjoying it and I was like, okay, I can see where these characters are going to go and get all the setup. But as it was, it's like a standalone, I was like, this book peaked too early, and then the whole last 40% reads just like an epilogue, and I was like, no, this is how it's set up for it being a standalone, just does not work. I also don't have too much to say about House of Dragons by K.A. Lindy. This was on Audible, which I am trying out for the month because it was like a free month or something. You got a free book from it, so I downloaded something to read in the future, and then in the meantime you can read as many like free Audible ones as you want or listen to. So I listened to that one, and it is YA fantasy romance, and if you read the description of it, it is exactly what you think. So it is your standard dragons, shadow daddy, tough main character energy with daddy and fae issues, like absolute standard YA fan route. Like you know exactly what you're getting going into this one, so I have nothing to say about it. I gave it a 3, absolute middle of the road. And also not much to say about The Rose Bargain, which I got as an ARC on NetGalley, so that is coming out in February, and that is by Sasha Payton Smith, and it is billed as The Selection Meets Cruel Prince, which could not agree more. That is bang on, and I gave that 3.5 stars. I really did have a good time with it. We are following our main character, Ivy, who is in this alternate history version of England where the queen is fae. So she's immortal, been around for 400 years, and every year girls of a certain age are presented to the queen for their what's called a rose bargain. Every single person in this version of England gets a bargain that's granted by the fae queen, and they can ask for something, you know, better crops or to be really good at the piano or something, and then the queen will take something in return, usually like a finger or a toe, but it's like some of them usually go pretty badly. So the girls that are of marriageable age are usually presented, and then they ask for something that will make them better marriage material. So it's got Bridgerton vibes in that way. So they ask to, you know, be a little bit prettier. They ask to have like a talent, like painting or something like that, and then they like lose a toe or like lose their fingernails or something. So Ivy is entering this, and her idea is to get her sister's memories back because her sister went 2 years ago and made some bargain that she doesn't remember, and it has been downhill ever since for their family. Her sister has had all kinds of problems, and so Ivy is going into this to get retribution for her family and her sister. But things take a turn because the queen all of a sudden is like, hey, I have this son, and he's decided he is getting married this year. He's also fae, and he's going to pick from one of you. So if you want to be entered, then here we go, and we're going to have some competition to see who is the last one standing and the best option for him. So Ivy enters this competition to, again, in some way get retribution for her sister and her family. So it's an interesting story as it goes along, and I like the plot, I like the pacing, but I mean, you can tell just from the description that's literally The Selection Meets Cruel Prince, so absolutely bang on. So not much to say about that. On to ones that I did enjoy and have something to say about. The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes just came out on July 30th, and I gave that 4 stars. That is in the Inheritance Games world. So the Inheritance Games was originally a trilogy. There was a 4th book that came out about this heiress and 4 brothers who are dealing with the death of their grandfather, and she inherits all of his money. So all about their story. This is a few years later where she has all of this money, and her and the brothers are now having a game every year. Rules are a little bit different, but the end result is that the random person who wins the game wins a life-changing amount of money. So we're in the second year of the games in this book. We didn't get one for the first year. We don't know what happened, but we get the POVs of 3 different characters in this book that are part of this game and trying to win this money, and are all in some way connected to those original characters in their story. So those original characters do show up in this book, and it's better to have read those so you know their backstories and their connection to the characters that show up in this book. But the plot was great, like, because I liked the Inheritance games. If you like it, you will like this continuation because it's more games, more riddles, and similar, you know, in terms of the character and character development. So if you like Jennifer Lynn Barnes, this is a standard for her, so I think you will like this one as well. And I had a good time with it, and I like being in this world. The next book, though, this does end on a cliffhanger, multiple cliffhangers, and the next book is not out until next summer, so if that's going to bother you, you might want to wait. Surprisingly, I also gave 4 stars to Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and this has been making the rounds. It is on Kindle, and I wouldn't say like it's fantastic. It does need editing. However, I gave it 4 stars because I actually had a really good time with it. It is fantasy romance. I thought it was like a little bit different than what we usually get in that genre. I won't go too much into the plot because I feel like a lot of people have talked about it, so I'm sure you've seen it out there. But I thought that was interesting, and I had a good time. Like, while I was reading it, there were, you know, some issues. It definitely could have been edited. It's like 670 pages or something like that. Did not need to be. Probably could have been like 450 and been fine. So that needed some work. But I had fun with the overall story and the banter and the characters, and I'm surprised because there are people who have reviewed it that like DNF'd it and really didn't like it, that I usually agree with their opinions on pretty much everything. So I was surprised how much I really did enjoy that one. I also enjoyed and gave 3.5, maybe 4 stars to Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson. This is the author of the Truly Devious series, which I read, I think that was last year, and really enjoyed that one. So I enjoy Maureen Johnson as a like YA mystery author, and once you start reading this, you will know. If you read that series, then you will absolutely know that she's the author of this because they are very similar. It's got the exact same vibes. In this one, we are following Marlo, who for various reasons goes off to work at a mansion on an island where some haunted things have happened. There was a tragic story with a family who used to live there, and now many years later they have opened it back up and they are giving tours to the public. So she goes there to be part of the group of teenagers who are giving the tours. But soon after she gets there, their overseer, the one adult on the island who brought all these teenagers there, goes missing, and they are trying to figure out what the heck happened, where she went. And then also we are getting the mystery of what happened to the original occupants of the house, because there was a mysterious death, and they're sort of getting that backstory of what happened to those people who died back then. So it is similar to that Truly Devious series where you have the dual timeline going. So you have everything that's happening in present day, and then you are getting the POV from one of the characters of the past who from the timeline where those original people died. I personally liked Truly Devious a little bit better because just the way that it was set up and like the storyline. I thought this one was like way more obvious to figure out, like maybe a little bit too easy. But I do appreciate that it's a standalone because the Truly Devious series went on, I think, like 4 or 5 books, something like that. So this is just a single standalone, and I think would be good for the spooky season if you like low stakes spooky. I don't like horror books, so this was good enough. And now we're on to the books that I didn't like and just made me frustrated. And I think we'll go in order of like least frustrating to like most hated. Should we just like end on a bad note? I don't know here. All right, 2 stars to Off Midway Station by Mark Allen Edelheit. This is military sci-fi, and it comes out in September. So this was an arc from NetGalley, and based on the other reviews that I saw on NetGalley and Goodreads, I am in the minority in not liking this. Everybody loved it. Everybody like thought that it was, you know, great military sci-fi, and I just don't agree. There's tons of action, like at the 50% mark, then the action starts. However, there's so much over explaining in this, it made me insane. It needs more editing. You get the POV of like 3 different characters. However, like as you're reading it, they do seem different. You know whose like character you're in, but at the end of the day, when you like look at all 3 of them, you're kind of like, these are the same. They're the same character. So that was a little frustrating, but the over explanation is what killed it for me. Like, no, I have no military or science background, especially not space science. So sure, there's some things that are going to need to be explained, but also your readers aren't dumb. They can understand from context clues. And I hate the way that this was written, where it's like a character makes a statement and then there's that you could probably figure it out from, and then there's an entire paragraph of explaining that statement that just did not need to be there. So I'll take reading for an example, because I think that's something that we are all familiar with. You have a character that says like, my TBR is so long, I need to edit the books that I want to read, Stephanie said. Like, if you didn't know what TBR meant, I think you would get it from the context clues that I gave you in that sentence. You'd be like, huh, she needs to edit what she reads. Could TBR possibly stand for to be read? Probably. I think a reader could figure that out. And that is what happens in this. Like, somebody will say a statement like that related to like science, space, something. And then there is an entire paragraph or 2 after that being like, what he meant was a TBR is a to be read list of all of the books that they want to read, blah, 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 on and on. And I'm like, I don't need that much explanation. I'm not stupid. And that's how this book was like making me feel, that like all of these like explanations just were not needed. And there were so many, there's like an entire chapter where one of the main characters rides a train, and I'm like, what was the point of this? Like, I read the entire book and I still don't know. There's like one tiny little snippet of like something that he saw on the train that ends up relevant later, but that could have been put in anywhere. I'm like, this entire chapter was stupid. Why are we reading a chapter about him riding a train in space? Like, it's just, I was really frustrated by that one. Thought I was starting with the least frustrated there, but maybe I was wrong. I gave 1.5 stars to Between Dragons and Their Wrath, and I think that might be another one where I am in the minority. But this just came out on August 27th, but I did read it early because I got an arc for it, and this is fantasy by Devin Madsen. You would think with the title, like Between Dragons and Their Wrath, that we would get dragons, but we don't. We got like 2 chapters of dragons. The dragon is like a little bit at the beginning, hardly in it at all, and then like not mentioned again till the end, and it's just very frustrating. So I missed the dragons, but overall, this was boring. I was so bored. There's like no plot. And I do think there is writing there, like there were some lines and things that I thought like the author was like a good writer, but I just nothing happened, especially not based on like what you read as the synopsis. I'm like, where was any of that? It's supposed to be about revolution and political intrigue and dragons, and none of that happened. There was just terrible smut for smut's sake. And like one of the characters, I just hated getting to her chapters because that's all she thought about. Like her entire personality was that she was a lesbian who found every woman that she interacted with hot. And it's just like, I bored reading her thoughts. Like, this is outrageous. Like, it was just not good. So there's no other, like, other than sometimes like there was good writing, and I think if it wasn't smutty, like, and there was a plot, that maybe like the writing could be good, but they had no other redeeming qualities. It was just another one where I was just like, why am I listening to this? This is ridiculous. So I did not like that one. And I think that there are people who really did enjoy that one as a fantasy. So I might be in the minority in that too. And I have 2 more that made me angry. So I'm going to start with this one that comes out in September, another arc, The Water Thief by Natasha S. Brown. And this is YA dystopia. It's first person present tense, which is not my favorite, but I'd like try to give it a chance once in a while. Did not work in this instance, but it is much too simple in the writing and took forever to get to the plot. So it's Hunger Games, but with water. Like the water that rains down from the sky is poison, and otherwise all the water that they get is controlled by, you know, their version of the government, whoever is in charge in their little areas, and they get basically like a sip of water a day. So that's, you know, basically everybody's starving and can't get any water to drink, so everybody's sick and dies early. So we are following the main character, River, who years ago stole water to try to help her father who was dying, and she ended up getting sent to prison. And she is now out 10 years later. She went in at 8 years old, and now she's 18. I think that's the age that we're talking here. And she goes back to her town to try to find her mother. Her mother is dead, so she's figuring out her life with her friends, and they're like trying to help this town that has no water. And when you read the synopsis, there's this whole thing about games, basically, like the Hunger Games, where she's going to enter and try to win, and you win like power and favor and all of these things. That doesn't happen until like the games are not even brought up until the end of the book. Like she doesn't even get to enter, and they don't really start making it a plot point until like the last like 20% of the book maybe. I'm like, why did it take so long to get to this? Up until then it just meanders. There's like no plot, there's no point. Like it's just the writing is super simple. It's so much younger than YA. I'm like, I don't know what this is supposed to be here. So it was just frustrating to read through. Was not having a good time with that at all. I should have DNF'd it, but I don't know why I didn't DNF any of these. I think I was just like mad and wanted to finish or something. But that was not a fun one to read through, just too frustrating. And then to finally get to the point, like we didn't even get to see the games, just like the point where she's like, okay, she made it in, and now what? Like that's where the book ends. So we get like nothing that was the original plot. So did not like that. And then my most frustrating book of the month, my final one that I gave 1 star to, I think this one, which it was not even as bad as some of the ones that I just listed in terms of the writing, the plot. Like I could have given it higher stars compared to whatever I just listed, but I was so mad at this one, like more so than the other ones, because it had so much promise and potential, and it just was wasted, and I was so mad about it. So this is my most frustrating read. And again, this just came out August 6th, and I've seen high reviews of it, so maybe it's just me. Gilded Wicked Mirrors by Hazel St. Louis. Oh my gosh, I was so mad. It's very Crescent City, and I happen to like Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. And I was so frustratingly disappointed that it did not work out. The idea is there. We've got Quinn, and even in her introduction, the author specifically says like, hey, I know how much this is like, she doesn't name Crescent City, but she's like, I know how much this is like some other books that are out there, especially like really popular fantasy books right now, but I wrote this before, and my character names and the idea that she's a ballerina, like I had these and it was already written, so I just kind of went with it. Wasn't trying to copy what was out there, which I can understand because they are like really common like plot themes and names, so like no shade there. So yeah, you see the Crescent City comparisons, and like the story is very Crescent City, but I'm okay with that, but you know, whatever. But that is not why I was so mad. Like that's fine, the idea is there, I don't care, but it was so frustrating because I liked the idea and I liked the potential, and it just did not pan out, and it made me so mad. So we've got our main character Quinn, and she's with her friends, lives in this city where there are mirrors all over the place, and the mirrors are somehow magical, and you can make bargains with them. Kind of everybody goes out like on their 18th birthday to like make like a little one, but essentially you are asking the mirror for some sort of power, something to make your life better. Similar that I talked about in the Rose Bargain, but instead of a Fey Queen, all these mirrors are a little bit different, and you bargain to give up something in exchange for this thing that you really want. And they can be like stupid and silly, and then the mirror will just like take something small from you, or they can be extravagant and they will, you know, change your life, but like a lot of negative things go along with that. And they're sort of all over the city. You can bargain as much as you want, and all of her friends have done it. Quinn is coming up on her 18th birthday, so it's like a thing that you have to go on the night of your 18th birthday and make this bargain. So she goes with her friend through this process. Her friend like drags her into a mirror, and they're standing inside, and they like meet the spirit that controls the mirror. She does a little bargain with him, and she's got to go complete the bargain. Her friend goes with her. Friend goes missing. She's like with her friend group, and then the next morning, the friend that went into the mirror with her winds up dead. And she knows this because she's a medical examiner. So she works with her uncle. Her parents have died. She works with her uncle, who's a medical examiner, finds her friend's body, and the story is essentially that she is torn in her life, that she really wants to be a ballerina. She really wants to do that as a career, but she is really smart and really good at being a medical examiner, so she's kind of stuck there. It's very hard to be a ballerina. She doesn't want to bargain with the mirror to be a ballerina. It's one of the things you can do is get better talents, but she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't like the mirror bargains, thinks they're problematic. So there's so much like great potential in this storyline of like her tension between her jobs, her trying to figure out what happened to her friend, figuring out the mysterious markings that her friend had, like realizing she didn't really know anything like about her life and how the mirror had affected her and what was going on there. So I loved it. I loved this idea of the magic system, and you know, you could be born completely powerless and you can ask the mirrors for magic and the things that you have to give up. And there's like so many different like levels and intrigue. You get vampires in this too. So there's so many ways that this story could go, and none of them worked. It was so repetitive. I was reading the same sentences like over and over, and the plot progressed nowhere. And this is billed as new adult, and I honestly think the only thing that kept it, like made it new adult instead of young adult, was the swearing, which was completely misplaced and repetitive again. Like it just made no sense to the story. So like the writing, every bit of it was repetitive. I could have quit at 20% and basically gotten the point of the entire story. Insanely frustrating. We've got our main character going back and forth with the mirrors. We've got her going back and forth with her love interest. We've got her going back and forth with her friends. And it's just like, why is this not progressing anywhere? Like there's so many great ways to go with this. Like so many interesting things you could do with the story, with the mirror, with her life. And I'm like, we are picking the worst options of where this could go. We are not giving any details. We are not explaining the world. We are not using this to the full potential. We are just repeating the same things. And I'm like, why did you waste such a great concept and so many great ideas on a story that goes nowhere? And I'm mad because I was so looking forward to it and I was really excited, but I like started reading it. I was like, maybe not loving like the writing style or like the weird swearing that's thrown in all the time, but maybe I can get past it, and just went on and on. I'm like, no, I cannot. I'm so mad that this idea, like just like picturing the world of like, she's like going up this hill and there's like 10 mirrors that are sitting there like waiting to be made bargains with, and they're all like shining and like talking to you and stuff. And I'm like, that would be so creepy and so cool. And why are we not doing anything with it? So I don't know, maybe other people really like that one. Let me know if you have read it, if you were going to, if you're looking forward to it, because I was completely frustrated. And I don't know, I don't feel like I was in a reading slump because I did have some really great reads in there with Grandest Game and Death at Morning House. Like I was having a good time reading during the month, and then I would get those ones in there that were like so insanely frustrating. I don't think it was a slump. I think it was just certain books that I got really mad at. Like it made me more mad than usual when a book was terrible. So I don't know what that was about my August, but they were really frustrating reads, and I am glad to be done with them. I really need to learn how to DNF. It's one of the things on my list to do, to learn to be better at, and one day I will. But for now, I read through them and I regret it. Let me know what you read in August, if we read any of the same books. Let me know how you felt about that, even if you feel completely different, because I know that there are a lot of people on Goodreads and things that were rating these like 4 and 5 stars, and I don't know how that happened, but that's what makes reviews so great. It's like watching all the different reviewers on YouTube, because we're all so different in our tastes and personalities, and you never know how a book is going to come across to you. So let me know if you disagree with me on any of these. But that is my August wrap up, everything that I've got. And now we are heading into September. I am currently reading The Bonesmith, but I do not anticipate myself finishing that by the end of the day tomorrow. So that will be on my September wrap up, and I will see you then. And I hope that it's a better reading month. But I will see you next month for September wrap up. But before then, I do have a couple of other fun videos coming to you in the month of September, and a couple fun things planned for October. So I hope that you are getting as excited for fall as I am. That's everything for this one. I will see you next week.